Good afternoon and welcome everyone to the Department of Justice Coordinated Tribal Assistance Solicitation Fiscal Year 2021 Just Grants and Submitting an Application webinar. My name is Christina and I will be your moderator for today. It is my pleasure to introduce our presenters, Jennifer Jeffries, Lisa Hartman, and Olivia Grew with the U.S. Department of Justice Justice Grant Systems team. And we also have several panelists joining us from their team. And we also have some panelists joining us from the Department of Justice CTAS team. Thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon, and starting our webinar will be our first presenter, Jennifer. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Great, thank you, Christina. So the purpose of today's discussion is to learn more about Just Grants and to address some of the questions that you may have. We want to ensure that you are off to a great start and have the tools needed to utilize Just Grants. Let's take a moment to go over today's agenda. In today's session, we will cover entity onboarding, application submission, application acceptance, and lastly, where to go for help, and look at a few entity onboarding steps. If you are new to the Just Grant system, here's a visual roadmap that can help you be aware of the steps needed to go through the grant process. Grantees will first want to obtain a DUNS number and confirmation of this. Once you have your DUNS number, you will then want to register in SAM.gov and receive your confirmation from SAM.gov as well. Afterwards, you will need to get a confirmation from your authorized organization representative or your AOR from the SAM.gov eBiz point of contact. Now it's time to get into the grants. You will need to search through the grants.gov website and select a competition ID for the funding opportunity you'd like to explore. If you decide to apply for funding, you will complete and submit forms, the SF424 and SFLLL in grants.gov. Submitting these forms will automatically create an account in Just Grants if your organization does not already have one. Here is a roadmap that can help you visualize the steps that are needed when you are onboarding. Once the entity administrator invites the users in Diamond, the entity administrator will then assign roles for each user. The users will receive an email from Diamond, and then they need to go into Just Grants to successfully log in. Once the users have logged in, the entity administrator will then need to assign awards to users. So this gives you a step-by-step process of how to set up your account in Just Grants. Next up, we'll look at a few entity administrator steps. These are the steps that the entity administrator must take in order to invite, register, and assign roles to all Just Grants users. The entity administrator is the only user that is able to invite new members. There is only one entity administrator allowed for an organization. The entity administrator is also responsible for removing inactive members and assigning appropriate access roles in Just Grants. During the application process, the entity administrator should verify that all users have completed their onboarding and registration tasks and have logged into Just Grants. Let's take a look at Just Grants registration steps. Each new user invited to Just Grants by the entity administrator will need to follow instructions in the registration email that is generated when the entity administrator adds them to Just Grants. Once they receive the system-generated email, they'll follow the directions within 72 hours or the email will expire. The steps to register begin with the new user selecting or creating security questions and answers. Security questions will need to be answered if a user needs to reset a password as well. The next registration step is to enter and confirm a password if the user would like to have that. Just Grants also uses a multi-factor authentication system to secure the organization's data. Each user will decide to use the Authenticator app, a text message, a voice message, or email to receive the login code. A new code is generated each time the user logs in. For this reason, each user in your organization should have their own username and password. So let's go ahead and take a look at the entity roles in Just Grants. At this point, you should have identified your authorized users for JustGrants. Think about who will be working on your grants currently or in the future. Here are a list of the roles as of now that are available to assign to your users. Keep in mind that users can be assigned multiple roles when you are assigning them. Once you have your list, please go into Diamond and add each person and assign their roles. Once you have added them, please let the user know that there'll be an email sent to their address from Diamond. We've created an entity user role matrix to break down each of the roles, and that should be available in the chat where you can explore the user matrix on how the user's accounts will work in JustGrants. This is in a PDF format, and you can certainly reference this at any time. A user with the application submitter role will be the only person in JustGrants that will be able to submit an application. The application submitter is automatically created when the application is submitted in grants.gov and is assigned as the application submitter role and automatically assigned as the application submitter in JustGrants. If this needs to change, the entity administrator can reassign this role in JustGrants as needed. The application submitter identifies the forms needed to submit an application, complete the web-based budget form, completes and certifies the application on behalf of your entity, and submits the application in JustGrants. If a member is assigned only the application submitter role, they will not be able to see funded awards in JustGrants. It is possible to assign multiple roles to the user with the application submitter role if that is what your organization prefers. The authorized representative must be invited by the entity administrator and must complete the registration process we discussed earlier. The authorized representative will need to register prior to submitting an application from JustGrants. The entity administrator manages all users and their abilities within JustGrants. There, again, can only be one entity administrator in JustGrants at a time. It would be best to know who may be a backup entity administrator just in case someone is on vacation or must go out on medical leave. We also have created entity management resources to kind of get you in the system and logged in through setting up your entity. Also on this page, you will have access to the job aids related to entity management as a tool to help you set up JustGrants. We'll go to the next slide. So here we are at the application submission. This is the part of the grant lifecycle that involves completing and submitting web-based forms, as well as attachments that are required from the published solicitation. The process of submitting an application in JustGrants begins in grants.gov. Once you've located a funding opportunity with the Department of Justice, you will submit an SF-424. If you are applying for funding from the COPS office, you will also submit a supplemental to the SF-424. An SF-LLL is also submitted in grants.gov. Aside from the SF-424 and the SF-LLL, which are completed in grants.gov, most of your application is entered in JustGrants. Your entity information is populated based upon entries made in SAM.gov and used in grants.gov. You have 2 weeks from your deadline in grants.gov to submit your information needed into JustGrants. For example, if your due date in grants.gov is April 1st, then you have until April 15th to complete an application in JustGrants. You can submit earlier in both systems if you would like. This is important to know. You will have 2 application submission deadlines, one for grants.gov and one for JustGrants. Most of the application requirements will be submitted from JustGrants. Some of the ways that JustGrants streamlines the process is that you are provided with the ability to use a web-based budget detail worksheet. Not only is this process more efficient, but it also establishes a shared structure and narrative for all of the Department of Justice. Streamlined validation of your budgets also allows the process of clearing new budgets to be much faster. Your organization specifically will assign the entity administrator. Your organization, specifically your assigned entity administrator, has more control of your users and award assignments and does not require intervention from the Department of Justice to make updates to those assignments. The entity administrator defaults to your organization's EBIS POC or point of contact, but as we saw earlier, that person can be reassigned as needed. So let's look at CTAS for 2021. Due to the introduction of JustGrants, there are several changes to the application process that have changed since last year. This year, you will need to apply in both grants.gov and JustGrants. The information that you will enter in grants.gov is limited to completing, one, the SF-424, and secondly, the SF-LLL. If you are applying for funding from the COPS office, there may be supplemental SF-LLL forms as well. Once you've submitted this information in grants.gov, you will complete the application in JustGrants. It is in JustGrants that you will select purpose areas, including a proposal narrative and abstract, and enter all of your budget and additional information. The content of your application entry remains the same. Only the system has changed. You will still use purpose areas. Tribal consortiums can also still apply to a purpose area. So now let's take a look at the purpose areas that will be used for FY21. Please take a few moments to review the purpose areas for this year. All right, and now we'll go ahead and look a little bit at grants.gov. In a few moments, Olivia will walk you through all of the steps of applying for funding. The process begins in grants.gov, where you will find federal funding opportunities and apply to those funding options. Grants.gov has a wealth of tutorials and assistance to help you register and submit throughout the process. If you go to https://www.grants.gov/web/grants/learn-grants.html. This link will lead you to instructions to walk you through the grants.gov process. This is about a 1-minute video. Again, it'll walk you through how to register, complete user roles, how to search for federal grants, what is a grant opportunity, and an intro to applying to grants.gov. The thing to remember is that there are two things that are required for your application. You want to complete the two main steps when submitting your grants in grants.gov. First, you need to know and need to find the funding opportunity and the application package. Once you have accessed the opportunity and submitted the SF-424 and SF-LLL in grants.gov, you will receive two notifications from grants.gov. The first confirms receipt of the two forms, and the second will let you know whether the form's been validated and successfully submitted. This should take no more than 48 hours following your submission. In JustGrants, there are additional web-based forms that must be submitted. It will be in JustGrants that you will select your purpose areas or areas to submit the proposal abstract and proposal narrative. For those who are returning users, you will need to submit goals, objectives, deliverables, and timelines just like before. Make sure your budget information, including the budget detail form, is included. You will also submit a disclosure of duplication and cost items. So next up, I believe we're turning it over to Olivia to walk us through a brief demo of the system. Olivia?
Hi, everyone. I'm Olivia Grew. I am with the Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs, and I am a business representative on the JustGrants team. Formerly, I have been a grant manager at OJP in the Office for Victims of Crime, and then I transitioned to our Audit and Assessment and Management Division. So I've been around OJP for a long time, and I'm happy to be talking to all of you today. Jennifer gave a great overview of everything that leads up to what I'm going to show you. And so what I'm going to show you is actually a demo of what you're going to be going through when you apply for the CTAS funding opportunity. Just a little caveat, because I'm doing a demo in a development system, there's a few things that I needed to do for the demo to make this work. So you might be seeing a few things that you won't actually see in the live system, but put that aside, this demo gives you the overview of from grants.gov all the way to hitting submit and certify in JustGrants. So I think you'll get a really good overview and a good picture of what you're going to be going through. That being said, really applying for CTAS is just like applying to any other competitive opportunity in JustGrants. The difference is we worked with the uniqueness of what CTAS is, given that there's 7 purpose areas, to make our JustGrants system really user-friendly for all of you. So we've taken what a typical applicant goes through and just tweaked it a little bit to make it work for CTAS. So Lisa, let's go ahead and press start, and I will walk you through what you're seeing. So here we are in JustGrants and grants.gov, and you'll see at the top I've entered my competition ID, which you could also search for coordinated, the solicitation name, but you can also search by the competitive opportunity number. I've found the solicitation I would like to apply for in grants.gov, and here's the summary screen. Test data that you're seeing here for purposes of demo. I've hit the apply button, and now I'm going to be going through and entering my entity DUNS number. And what you'll see on the next screen is the 2 required forms that basically make up the CTAS grants.gov application. So the one thing that is very unique to CTAS, and I recognize, is using grants.gov. I know in the past we've only used the grants management system, the legacy system, and now we're using grants.gov to connect directly to JustGrants. So these 2 forms are what will be kind of the application for CTAS. Now, grants.gov isn't really set up to specifically handle a solicitation like CTAS, the uniqueness of having purpose areas. So it at first might seem a little bit sort of wonky, forgive the term, that the 424 isn't really broken out by purpose areas. So the CTAS committee has come up with some great FAQs to kind of help walk you through that form specifically. But once you get into JustGrants, and I will show you this, you will be filling out specific information for each purpose area. So the title, the funding amount, all of that will be broken out when you get to JustGrants. It's just we need this connection from grants.gov to JustGrants to make everything work. Okay, so I'm not going to show you filling out each form because, again, in the dev system, I just had to work through a few things in the demo. But you'll get, we're going to get a successful application here, and I'll show you all of that. Okay, so the 2 forms are here, and I'm just going to what we call reuse a test form that we've already filled out for just to speed up the demo a little bit here. And what you'll notice is we're going to get a successful form for each of these, the 424 and the lobbying form. You can sort of ignore this screen for a few seconds. This is me finding my pre-recorded form for the purposes of the demo. So when you're actually in grants.gov, you're going to be at this point filling out your 424. And so once it skips through this section, I'm going to show you what we're going to get. So the 424 passed, and now I need to do my SFL of a lobbying form. And again, I'm reusing a template form for the demo, but you would actually be filling out your lobbying form here. And then we will look for another passed. Okay, so I would like to start submitting my grants.gov application. Sign and submit. You're going to get a sort of PDF here of what the grants.gov application looks like, just kind of a confirmation screen. It takes a second to load, so just bear with it. Okay, that looks good. And then I want to go to my detail screen because I want to take a look at my grants.gov number because I'm going to use that in JustGrants as my way of finding the application. Okay, so now we need agency received to be green. Great. Okay, so now time has gone by a little bit and I'm going to switch over to being the entity administrator in JustGrants. I'm going to log in. And here's where I want to find that application that was started. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to use the Applications tab. There are other ways to find the application. You can also go home and go to your work list, but this was just the way I chose to do it for the demo. So here it's going to pull up, and you see those in the table, you can click on the caret, and that's where a search box pops up. And I'm going to enter that number. And once I hit the apply button, there is the application that came over from grants.gov. As the entity admin, I'm going to select that application and I'm going to choose my application submitter. And in your entity, application submitter should be loaded in this assign to drop down. I'm selecting my application submitter. Again, these are all demo names. Okay, so I assigned it to my application submitter. So now I'm magically switching hats again, and in the demo, I'm becoming the application submitter. And here's where we'll really get into the meat of the CTAS application. So now I am the application submitter for my CTAS application. And bear with the demo as I do a few things to pull up the application submitter demo role. Okay, so I'm now the application submitter and I'm going to find the application I want to complete. Again, I'm using the application tab on the left-hand side. You could also go home and search your work list for the application to apply towards. Okay, and here it is. I will click on this one. And over on the right, after I hit the link, should be the begin button. So as you'll know, in grants.gov, you weren't given the opportunity to select your purpose areas, again, because grants.gov isn't set up to have purpose areas. So here you are in the first screen as the applicant submitter, and you will make your selection out of the 7 purpose areas this year, which ones you will apply for. Now, so what we've done is what you'll see is we take your selections, and once you move through the application, there's going to be sections that have tabs. Purpose Area 1 tab, so say you're applying for Purpose Area 1, you'll see a tab and information under Purpose Area 1 will start flowing. And you'll have to fill out specific things for each purpose area. I just want to throw that out there because this is part of the uniqueness that we have built for CTAS in JustGrants. It's very purpose area driven, and we've tried to put everything in the same spot just to make it as seamless as we can. So I'm going to select Purpose Area 1 and 2 for this demo. And specifically for Purpose Area 1, I want to show you the demographic form that we've added into the system. So you can hit save if you want to take a break, or you can hit continue to move forward in the application. So I'm going to keep going. And here is just where the meat of the application starts. You'll see the CFDA description, the CFDA number. All of it starts getting broken down by the purpose areas you've chosen. And here's the part I told you about, which is, it reflects what you saw in the 424, but here we've broken it down by purpose area. So each purpose area you're applying for, you'll see the 2 tabs. So you're just going to have to come in and fill out all of this information. You'll notice I'm going to make some mistakes on purpose just to show you that the system will give you a big error red message at the top if you've missed sections that are required. So here I'm going in and filling it out. I'm going to do this for each purpose area tab. Here's where you answer a few questions. Applicant type. I'm going to come in and pick from the drop down. Answer these questions below. Okay, and that's purpose area 1. So then you'll see I need to do this again for purpose area 2. And I'm going to come in and fill out my data. And I'll just let this run its course, and then I'll show you the error I make and what the system does. Okay, and I scroll down for purpose area 2, fill out the information for this. Okay, and I'm going to try and go forward and continue to the next section. Let's see what happens. All right, whoops, I missed putting the area affected by the project. So I need to go back and add the zip code of the area that is the purpose area will impact. So here I'm going to add my zip code, save it, and then I'm going to do the same for purpose area 2. Okay, and this should allow me to advance. Okay, so the next sections, we're going to confirm the authorized rep. And this again would be a preloaded dropdown that you can select from the authorized reps for that for your entity. Continue. Okay, and this is where you confirm your legal address, if this is correct. Okay. But this is where we enter the meat of the application. So you have a text box where you can, and I just added some test language, but you will go through and add what's required for each purpose area. Some sections will have a text box and some will be attachments. And we'll just keep moving through. And here's where I wanted to show the demographic form that we added into the JustGrants system. So this is the purpose area 1 required demographic form, and only if you select purpose area 1, you will receive this section. And you'll go through and complete this demographic form for purpose area 1. And I just went through it just to fill out some test data for everyone to see. And then this will get captured as part of your application. And I think this is a really great enhancement. I worked closely with COPS to get this. I think it's one of the really cool features of JustGrants that I love to highlight. All right, so I'll just keep entering my test data, and then I'll hit finish. And then what you'll be able to do is you can, once you see that I hit finish, you can refresh your screen where the demographic form gets captured, and you can go back in and edit it if you feel you've made a mistake to the form before you finalize your application. So I think that's helpful. So here's me just trying to getting back into the demographic form section. And let's see, hit close. Okay. So here, if I refresh under the Actions button, it will allow me to reopen the demographic form and I can make any changes. So that's for purpose area 1. And then I'm going to continue through the application with my tabs and upload attachments where they're required. And this will just show you what it looks like. You can select your file. And then once the attachment has been added, you can change the name of the file to specifically say what it is that you're uploading. And there's quite a few sections of the application. And for the demo, I didn't go through and add attachments for everything because I would be here with you guys for a long time. But you can see the function. Here's the budget worksheet that you'll upload. And it's gonna show you an actual error that I found while I was doing the demo. We had to update the file type that's accepted. So now JustGrants accepts Excel file types that are XLSM. So when you all go to attach your budget worksheet, you should be good to go and you will not receive this message. It will accept all those file types. So here I've attached my budget, and then as if you were completing your application, you would go through all of these tabs, and where appropriate for each purpose area, you would add your documents and attachments. And again, I didn't do this for the demo for time purposes, but you would walk through each. And then on the right, you can see it's starting to give you a green check mark, meaning that you've gone through those sections. And again, these are more application section. Here's your lobbying form that was pulled over from grants.gov. So there it is. And here's several disclosures that you need to walk through, answer these questions. Your certifications and assurances, and it'll give you a name and a timestamp when you acknowledge that section. Same with this certification. You'll get a name and a timestamp once you've certified it. Okay. Another section to add other disclosures and assurances. And again, you might not have application information to put in all of these sections, but I'm just showing you all of them because they could apply to different purpose areas. And then I've gone through all of those sections. I got the green checks. And here's the certify and submit. So you could click on each of those carrots and see kind of a read-only preview of everything you've done for your application. See, this is giving me sort of a snapshot of that first section that I completed. And then I'm going to go to certify and submit. It confirms my name, my timestamp, and you hit submit. And that takes you to the end of your application in JustGrants. And here you'll have your confirmation that it's been routed to the next step, which would be taken into the internal JustGrants side of things to begin peer review and all of that fun stuff. So I think that, I know that was long. I appreciate everybody sticking around. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah, just a few more slides before we get into questions and answers, if that's okay.
Perfect, thank you.
Just wanted to touch base about what to expect after submitting your application. After you submitted your application in JustGrants, you're probably wondering what's the next step. As Olivia mentioned, it goes into the internal review process. But once all applications for a solicitation have been reviewed, you will be notified. Every user in JustGrants should take time to check the system on a regular basis and be aware of any deadlines or information related to the grant. Next slide here for notifications. If your application is approved and is funded for the grant, your entity administrator and your authorized representative will be notified if the deadline for the application has been changed. JustGrants also sends notifications to the application submitter, entity administrator, and authorized representative when the application has been received in JustGrants from grants.gov. The entity administrator will also receive a notification when the award notification has been sent. So those are just a few things to know about notifications and the process of what to expect after you submit your application. Alrighty, I think we may be ready for questions and answers. Kristen, would you like to share any questions that we're getting from the audience to share with Olivia?
Sure. We're getting quite a few questions about what is the DIAMD system. Can you give a little more background on that?
Yep, Diamond, as we call it, is basically where you get your roles assigned to you. So your entity administrator can go into Diamond and assign roles. That's where the authorized rep gets assigned, but that's where roles are assigned for your role in JustGrants.
If there is an incorrect spelling of a person's name in the Diamond system, is there a way that they can update that?
Yes, your entity admin would need to go in and delete the user where you've seen the spelling or a name that's incorrect and re-invite the individual to spell everything correctly, I believe is the process. So I think I have to start with the entity admin to make that correction.
Great, thank you. If we have established roles, is there an easy way to change the established roles if we believe those are set up incorrectly?
Yeah. I mean, you would go into your entity admin would go into Diamond and make those adjustments. I think if you mean requesting access to certain roles or assigning them to a specific person, but that's all handled through Diamond.
Thank you. Is it possible to have more than one AOR?
The answer to that is yes. I know specifically COPS often requires more than one.
Great, thank you. Will the entity administrator receive a notification that the SF424 is due? I just completed a FEMA grant and I do I need to go in and update my SF424?
Yeah.
Olivia? Hi, this is James. I'll take that question. For the applicant who asked that question, so for each federal agency that you're applying for and each program within that agency, you're going to be doing a separate SF424 that is related to the solicitation in which you're applying for. I can't speak for FEMA, but I can generally tell you that whatever SF424 that you use for FEMA, you would not be using for CTAS. And the same is true if you were applying to a COPS only program and then you wanted to apply to a program in JJ under a different solicitation, it would be a separate SF424.
Great, thank you. And are you able to adjust the budget from the estimated funding request in grants.gov? So if the budget amount changes from when they submit it in JustGrants in grants.gov to when they submit it in JustGrants, are we able to adjust that amount?
Great question. So like I explained earlier, the 424 that you're going to fill out for CTAS is not purpose area specific. It's kind of, think of it as like a CTAS wide 424. So the data in there isn't really going to make sense in terms of purpose areas. So that's why when you get into JustGrants, we've taken those fields, estimated funding amount, project period, project title, and we've broken them down by purpose areas. So you're going to fill that out exactly for each purpose area. I know it's not the best set up, but it's how we made the connection to grants.gov work for JustGrants for CTAS. So you will have an opportunity to fill that out for each purpose area in JustGrants, and that's the information that we in JustGrants will carry forward with your application.
Excellent, thank you. Just to clarify, I understand that we have to submit the SF424 and the SFLLL in JustGrants, but the FOA is unclear if we also have to submit those to JustGrants. Can you clarify if we need to submit those to both places?
Nope, you won't need to do anything. The connection from grants.gov to JustGrants, it'll pull that information for you. So you do not need to upload your SFLLL and SF424 into your JustGrants application. That all gets pulled over for you.
Excellent, thank you. Can you access the JustGrants customized requirements of the solicitation and type those out in Word and then upload that into JustGrants, or do you need to type directly into JustGrants?
Nope, you can absolutely take from a pre-typed Word doc or whatever you're working on and put it into JustGrants. So yeah, copy and paste absolutely works.
Thank you. Is it possible to repeat what email will be received within 24 hours after submission of the SF424 and SFLLL in JustGrants?
So within 48 hours of your submission.
Thank you. Another question is, they're not sure if you can help, but they're getting an error in JustGrants when applying for CTAS and grants.gov. It triggered an application in JustGrants. However, it appears there is an error for the application. Specifically under the task, it says repair flow configuration, and under assigned to, it says broken processes.
That is a known, we're calling it a broken assignment issue right now. It's a known issue, and we have created a ticket for that. I think I know exactly which application and applicant this is, so we're working behind the scenes on that. So it's nothing you've done wrong. It's just something, a little issue with the system.
Great, thank you. Do all the roles, like the grant award administrator and financial manager, have to be onboarded and assigned to the application at the time of submission, or is it only the application submitter and authorized rep?
I believe the crucial roles at the time of application submission are entity admin, application submitter, and authorized rep. Again, roles and entity onboarding isn't my specialty, so I don't know if the training team has any more guidance on setting up roles in advance.
The first three roles that Olivia mentioned, the entity administrator, application submitter, and authorized rep, are important for the application process. The grant award administrator and financial manager will not need to be added until you have the award. So they're not necessary at this time.
Excellent, thank you. For Purpose Area 1, will there be a printable demographic form?
This is Melissa with the COPS office. To answer that person's question, we do have the demographic form loaded or uploaded in our Tribal Justice website, as well as if you go to our COPS homepage, we also have the demographic form questions there as well. So you're welcome to take a look at both of those documents to help you prepare your answers when you go into JustGrants and fill out the data.
Great, thank you. And there's just a couple more questions that we're verifying that we can indeed prepare answers in Word and copy and paste those into all of the JustGrants application fields, correct?
That is correct.
Excellent, thank you. Is it possible to access the questions outside of the JustGrants on the demographic form so that they can share questions with their police records department so they can go ahead and get those answers ahead of time?
Yep, absolutely. And also, just as the FYI, the rest of the application pieces, purpose area narrative templates, the tribal justice and community profile document, the budget worksheet, the timeline, all of the documents that you need to prepare for the application is on the Tribal Justice website, as well as the components website pages. So you do have the information, particularly the questions outside of the system to help you prepare.
Great, thank you. Can an AOR be assigned also as a submitter?
The same person being the authorized rep and the application submitter. I do know for roles, Lisa, I might need to help out here, because I do know it's one email per role, per entity, but can you chime in if you can?
Oh, sure, I can help with that. Any individual in your organization can be assigned any number of roles. There's only one entity administrator, but every other person can have all of the roles as needed. So it is possible to be both an authorized rep and an application for your organization.
Excellent, thank you. Can attachments of any type, PDF, Excel, Word, or other versions be uploaded into JustGrants? And also, will any versions with macros be blocked?
Great question. All of those will be accepted. And as I showed in the demo, originally we had not accounted for the macro format of Excel was actually blocked by JustGrants, but we've made an adjustment and update to the system, so now all forms can be accepted. So you should not run into issues with attachments.
Excellent, thank you. Can you explain the various things that are done through the Actions button and how the workflow works? Just looking to see what they need to do. They said their experience with JG so far, not in the application module, is that you don't close or do the things in the Actions button area. It looks like you may lose work if you click on something that you just may lose things.
You can use the action for certain things that I demoed, like refresh is a good way you can always use that with what you're working in. So if you were assigned an application, you would see that appear in your work list. So your work list is where things that are assigned to you will appear and display. There are other ways of accessing information. You can use the Applications tab on the left side. You can also use the search function. In terms of the Action button and what else it does, I don't really feel comfortable addressing all of that. I think that might be covered in one of the more generic applicant webinars that we're having. I don't know if anyone else on the team knows more about the Action button, but I do know it's refresh is what I've used it for most of the time.
The only thing I would add to the Action button is that if you do use the close, it will close your application, but it won't necessarily save the screen you just worked on. So if you're losing work, the recommended step is to click the Save button if you're going to close the application, and then you can use the Action button to close that application and retain your work.
Excellent, thank you. There's a few questions regarding entity administrator. Is there a way to add an alternate entity administrator? And then there's also a question to see if you can change the entity administrator because someone is no longer an employee.
All of those changes would be done through Diamond. Go ahead, Lisa.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, it's possible to change the entity administrator as long as the person who's going to take over that role is registered and logged in. Then the current entity administrator can just go ahead. There's a two-step process that allows them to transfer that responsibility to another person. So it's easy enough to do. And if somebody in your organization, your entity administrator will be on leave for extended time, then the best idea is to have someone there who's a backup, make that change, and then when that initial entity administrator returns, you can change it back.
Excellent, thank you. Is that the same process that would be used in order to add more members? And then also a follow-up to that is what member then completes the progress report if awarded?
I can answer that as well. The entity administrator can invite as many members as needed. So there's no limit to the number of JustGrants users you can have. It's just a matter of the entity administrator following the steps to invite that new member, having that new member register and log in. The progress report is done by the grant award administrator and only the grant award administrator. You can have multiple grant award administrators in your organization, but only one assigned to a particular award, and that is the person who would be doing the progress reports.
Excellent, thank you. Can a grant submitter, just as a follow-up for clarification, can that grant submitter hold the same role as authorized representative?
There's nothing in the role setup in JustGrants that prevents that at all. So yes, they can.
Excellent, thank you. What do you do if you sign off on behalf of your organization because an AOR doesn't go into the system? This person basically takes care of all of those responsibilities, so their actual AOR does not go into the system. So how would they handle that?
I think we are strongly encouraging that whoever is the actual authorized representative for the entity should be the one logging in and completing anything that certifies and submits and puts a timestamp with their name. I believe that's what's being encouraged with the JustGrants system. I don't know, Melissa or James.
That's actually what we prefer. I mean, it's strongly, we don't encourage you to share passwords, and if someone is listed off as the signing official, they should technically be the one going in and doing all of that stuff, but we know that oftentimes they will delegate that task. It's a tricky kind of slippery slope. I think the only thing that I would, and my other colleagues can please chime in if they feel differently. A lot of times I've seen where authorized reps have like either submitted a letter to us or say, hey, I'm giving this person permission to sign off on behalf of me. You know, they're my secretary or they're my assistant, and I have them go in and do these things on my behalf after we talk about them. I have seen letters and sign-offs and things of that nature. Are very careful with that, because the authorized rep needs to understand that whether they're the one going in and doing this or not, they're still technically responsible.
Yep. And I was just going to say that the JustGrants website, they have a very nice handy dandy one-page description of grantee roles, which I find helpful. And according to the role defined for the authorized rep, that is that person enters into an agreement on behalf of the entity and binds it to the award terms and conditions. So whoever is going to be that authorized rep, that person is binding basically the entity to the grant award terms and conditions. It's important to make sure that that authorized rep is the person that you would like to be that in that role.
Hey, Melissa, this is Dara. I think the question, though, that's being asked is about the application submission, because the application submitter doesn't have to be the authorized rep. They can be entirely different roles. So I guess they're kind of, the idea is to make sure the verification that the authorized rep knows that the application is being submitted on behalf of the entity. And I think that's just where we would need to make sure that there is communication, that the application submitter has the authority for the entity to actually submit an application.
Great, thank you, everyone. For SF424 and the SFLLL, if previously awarded, do those need to be done each time we apply?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Every funding stream and source of funding is different, so you are doing those forms for each different solicitation that you are applying for.
Great, thank you. Are there word or character limitations for the questions in JustGrants?
Yes, there are, but they are very broad. We made sure not to put small limitations that you would run into issues with the text boxes. And I believe a few of the text boxes have followed any specific requirements the solicitation has for word or character limitations, but you won't run into issues in JustGrants where you're going to run out of space, pretty much, as how the word text boxes have been set up.
Great, thank you. Are the JustGrants online application fields, all of the questions, etc., available in a PDF or another document so that we can work on the application before tabbing through the various sections of the application module, just so that we can prepare everything up front?
No, they're not available in a PDF, but the application structure largely follows the requirements built into the solicitation. So really, if you work off of the requirements laid out in the solicitation, you should be ready to go once you come into the application in JustGrants. The order may be a little bit off in terms of what you see on the right-hand side, the list of the application content, but for the most part, it follows pretty streamlined what you'll see in the solicitation. So you should be prepared once you come into the system to tab through everything. And there's nothing new that has been in the CTAS application before, in a sense. It's just now all built into the JustGrants system web-based.
Hi, this is James. So just a little bit of clarification or to just delve into that question a little bit more. For the person that asked that question, I would strongly suggest you pull out the solicitation and then you go to the CTAS webpage on the Tribal Safety and Justice website. And if you decide which purpose areas you're applying for, and you fill out do all the required forms and download them from the Tribal Safety, Justice, and website, you can completely work on your application outside of JustGrants, because the overwhelming majority of CTAS is attachments, unlike some of the other programs for the department.
Great, thank you. I'm already assigned the role of the application submitter, but I want to make sure I understand correctly that the entity administrator will still have to assign the CTAS application to me once it populates from grants.gov. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. As the entity administrator is required to be the eBiz point of contact for the tribe under SAM.gov, how would you replace an entity administrator if they are no longer available, such as they moved before the change was made? They're just wondering how to do that.
I think that in a situation like that, you would probably need to work with our technical support team.
Thank you. My entity administrator tried to assign a role for me, but I have not received a confirmation email. Is there any guidance on that?
If you've logged into JustGrants previously, there's no need for another email. You'll just have that role assignment the next time you log in. If you have not logged into JustGrants and you're looking for that registration email, you might check your spam or your junk folder, because it is a system-generated email, and some organizations automatically send that kind of a thing to a spam or junk folder. If it has been more than 72 hours since you received that, it's going to have expired, and it's probably best to just go ahead and ask your entity administrator to re-invite you, which will generate a new email for you. Excellent,
thank you. I am listed as the AOR, but my PM is having a problem because I do the financial and progress reports in the AOIR, but I do not process the financial payments. I do have permission directly from our AR to sign on their behalf, and I collect the information, but I am not necessarily the active participant. Any suggestions on what should be done in those cases?
It appears to me on that question that is a conversation for you to have with your entity administrator or the team of folks that are going to be working on this application or what have you, and decide what's the best approach. I don't think that we can make that decision for you. It seems like that's an internal discussion about who's going to be submitting and what.
Great, thank you, James. For Purpose Area 1, can the same person be assigned twice as the authorized representative?
That's a great question. In the past, for our CTAS awardees, it was just one government executive, but I honestly don't know how this is going to play out with JustGrants. I believe that the direction the COPS office is taking is 2 authorized reps. So to answer that question, it's probably best to have 2 different names. I think you need to have 2. I believe, for signature purposes down the road to sign off on the awards. I believe we're aiming for 2.
Right, that would probably show up when they get to award acceptance stage.
Thank you. On the JustGrants website, there's a lot of great videos. They're wondering if there are any additional guides that can be printed out and that you can kind of review as you're working through instead of having to go back and forth from the video.
Yeah, certainly. We definitely have job aids that you can print out as well. that are listed on the JustGrants website. So under each of the grant life cycles, you can expand those tabs and explore the resources that are printable. And they provide screenshots and step-by-step instructions.
Excellent, thank you. Can you explain how to access Diamond?
When you're invited as a new user, you will be sent a registration email, and in that email will be a link. Unless you're the entity administrator, you will not access Diamond. You won't have any reason to. The Diamond system will send you a registration email. You'll have to take a number of steps, and then at the end of that process, you'll be able to log into JustGrants. But only the entity administrator will log into Diamond.
Excellent, thank you. For preparing application materials, can a Dropbox be established for all the repetitive attachments such as resumes and organizational charts? And then can those be uploaded from the Dropbox into JustGrants?
So there is a document repository that is available to you in JustGrants. Only the entity administrator, again, can actually upload those documents. If you have documents like you mentioned, resumes and the like, that you're going to use for multiple applications, then yes, those can be uploaded into the document repository and accessed for every application as needed.
Excellent, thank you. Will you still be able to access the RFP and related documents from an application in grants.gov?
Are they asking once they're in JustGrants, will they be able to access that from grants.gov? And I'm trying to understand what would be the purpose of that. I would just strongly recommend that one or two things. Once they're working on their application in JustGrants, if they need to refer to the solicitation itself, just have another tab open or have another computer beside you or have a hard copy printed out. I think that's the easiest, most effective way to do it.
Great, thank you. There's some additional slides of the presentation. With the grants.gov application, the question on budget, if that changes, just clarifying again that once it's submitted in grants.gov, if the budget changes from that time to the time you're submitting in JustGrants, that those adjustments can be made.
Don't worry so much about the 424. Please go ahead and do an estimated amount, and you don't have to go back in and update it. Just submit the 424 and the LL just to get started just to do it in grants.gov and just keep it moving and then move on to JustGrants. But if you put an estimate down on the 424, it's perfectly fine. Go into JustGrants and then put your requested amount in there. But you don't have to go back in. Once you enter your 424, just keep it moving and don't worry about trying to update the 424. It's not necessary, in my opinion.
Great, thank you. Can you clarify for the 424 supplemental, there was a mention of that when applying for Purpose Area 1?
No, for Purpose Area 1, it's just like the other purpose areas, and that is, this is a two-step application process this year. First step is to apply into grants.gov and submit one 424, one LLL, and then when you go into JustGrants, you will enter information such as the period of performance, the estimated cost, the title, per each of your purpose areas that you are requesting further in JustGrants. But there's no supplemental, if that makes sense. Just 1424 in grants.gov, and then you break it out per purpose area in the JustGrants system.
Great, thank you, Melissa. Is there still a tribal profile, and does that get uploaded for every purpose area?
There's still a tribal community and justice profile if that is the question. And Olivia may need to chime into this, but you only do one tribal community and justice profile. I can't see a reason why it would need to be uploaded multiple times, but I'll leave that for the JustGrants folks. But what you will need to make sure that you put or upload for each purpose area that you're applying for is your program narrative or purpose area narrative for each purpose area that you're applying for. For example, if you're applying to Purpose Area 1, Purpose Area 2, and Purpose Area 6, then you need to make sure that there is a purpose area narrative for each one of those programs as you go through the tabs underneath of that respective purpose area. but one tribal community and justice profile, and I cannot see why it would need to be uploaded more than once.
Just a clarification, if there was a way to obtain a PDF would be helpful to have of the JustGrants application sections, and just wondering if there was any way to have something to work from as they're preparing their application instead of having to go page tab through.
This is James. I understand what they're asking for. So in the solicitation document, which they should have whenever they're working on their application anyway, there's a checklist document in there that tells you everything that is required or should be submitted with your application. That checklist, I believe, is just one page. It may carry over to two. Have the solicitation, then specifically have that checklist page out. Also, I just want to say that as you're working on your application, because this is our first year with JustGrants produced solicitations in a little bit of a different format than maybe what you've seen from us in the past. And so because CTAS is so unique in having all these purpose areas, one of the things that the solicitation that JustGrants produced this year is it didn't have all the meat and potatoes or the level of detail that we would have liked for each purpose area. So about a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago, we created a purpose area spotlight document that has been emailed out, and it is also on the Tribal Safety and Justice website. Directly underneath of the solicitation document, it will say purpose area specific spotlight resource. I strongly and highly recommend that anyone who's thinking about applying to CTAS, that you have that and you read through that before you determine which purpose areas you want to apply to, because it gives you way more detail on each of the purpose areas than the solicitation document itself. Essentially, it's the level of detail that was provided in what our previous solicitations look like, but we just cut that information out and made it solely about the purpose areas so that you could have that information available. So if I was working on an application, I'd have the solicitation, I'd specifically take the checklist out of the solicitation, have that with me. I'd have this purpose area spotlight document, and then any of the other documents that you need to download and work are on the Tribal Safety and Justice website. I think that is your best approach, and I actually think that might be easier than a huge cumbersome PDF that would be multiple pages. You really just need the checklist and information on each of the purpose areas that you're applying for, and then the fillable forms you can get from this website that I keep mentioning.
Great, thank you, James.
So now we're going to take a look at award acceptance and the process that you'll go through in JustGrants. As we discussed, award acceptance, it's important to remember that submitting an application for funding does not guarantee approval of funds. If your application is accepted, then there are a number of steps that must be taken to prepare to manage the award. To accept an award, the entity administrator must take steps to be sure that the appropriate users and roles are ready to be assigned to a new award. DOJ will send a notification of an award to both the entity administrator and authorized representative assigned to the award. The authorized representative was assigned to the award by the application submitter during the application process. If the authorized representative has changed since the application was submitted, the entity administrator will need to take steps to reassign the correct authorized representative to the award prior to accepting or declining. In addition to verifying and possibly updating the authorized representative, the entity administrator will need to verify that the grant award administrator and financial manager that will be assigned to the award has registered and completely onboarded prior to the authorized representative accepting the award. The authorized representative will review all aspects of the award and accept or decline. The COPS office grantees will have two authorized representatives assigned to each award. Both authorized representatives must review and sign the award in order to accept it. In JustGrants, the process of accepting or declining an award is no longer managed by printing and signing a PDF. The entity administrator will assign the grant award. It is now done electronically by the authorized representatives. Once the award has been accepted, the entity administrator will assign the grant award administrator and financial manager. The authorized representative is the only role that is able to accept or decline an award. It must be a person in your organization with the authority to enter into a legal agreement on behalf of your entity and bind the entity and award terms and conditions. The authorized representative is assigned in the application submission process. However, the entity administrator should verify the correct authorized representative to the award package is listed on the system in order to accept or decline the award. So this image shows a few key steps and activities that are important points in the application and award acceptance process. The entity administrator and application submitter roles are created when submitting through grants.gov for the first time. The entity administrator needs to create and confirm the authorized representative so that the authorized representative can be included in the JustGrants application submission. If an application results in funding and being approved, the entity administrator needs to invite and register the financial manager and grant award administrator that will be responsible for the funded award. The authorized representative will then accept the award, and once the award has been accepted, the entity administrator will need to add a grant award administrator and a financial manager to the award. Now we'll take a few moments to turn it over to Lisa for a quick demo. Lisa?
Thanks, Jennifer. It is a really fairly quick process to walk through accepting the award, and again, this would be the authorized representative doing this. So the authorized representative will see any new funded awards on their work list, and this is a great way to get started. We'll take just a quick moment here from the home page where you log in. You'll be able to see the case type. In this case, we're looking for accept, decline, award agreement case type, and you can filter to that. So this entity has 3 possible awards to accept. So we're going to go ahead and open up one by clicking on the link to open that new award. So all of the sections that are here, we're going to scroll through a number of different sections. Each one must be accepted separately. So for instance, the first one is the award package acceptance introduction letter. Read through that, and you have to actually click the little checkbox to say, okay, I've read through, I understand that section. Then we scroll down to the next section, which is award information, and it just sort of verifies, information, including the number, the award amount, and the like, and we've selected that. Project information shows the info that you entered in the application. We have the financial information, and if there's a letter from OCFO, that is included here as well. So you can see all of that. We're going to go ahead and accept that. The award conditions can be lengthy, and the authorized representative will have to accept the entire group of them as one. They're not individually accepted. So they should read through and understand, of course, everything that's being agreed to. So they'll go through and read through and understand, all of the conditions that they're agreeing to. And again, this is why the authorized representative role is so important, because these are legally binding. And we're almost to the bottom. I believe in this particular award, we have over 50 conditions. All right, there we are. So we're going to go ahead and you can load more if there are more than 50, and they all have to be reviewed. So I have reviewed and understand the information. And then finally, the very last section is the acceptance and electronic signature page. And in this case, this is not an award from the COPS office. There's only one authorized representative. If this award is from the COPS office, there may be 2 authorized representatives. And again, both have to follow this exact same process of reviewing everything, selecting, they understand and agree for every section. So at the bottom of this, you'll see that there's a timestamp and date, the name of the person, their title, At the bottom of this page, we have 3 options. The first one on the left button is, will show up here in a moment. There's a cancel button, which means that everything that you've done is going to be erased, and you can cancel and return to the home page without having made any changes to this document. There's a save if you're not ready to, there's a decline if you choose not to accept the funding. And if you click decline, there's a box where you can justify why you're declining. You can also upload any sort of an attachment that supports your decision to decline. But we're going to accept, and when you click accept, it's pretty straightforward. Then this has become a fully funded award. And at this time, you'll see that it's pending account creation, and at this time, the entity administrator then would go ahead and assign the financial manager and the grant award administrator to the award.
Thanks, Lisa. Are there any questions from the audience that we want to address about award acceptance?
For the award acceptance, the agreement is long. Does that print out?
That is a good question. I believe that, I'm going to go back here a little bit in the demo, and I'm not sure that it prints out entirely, but the actions button here, if you pull the actions button open and click, it should be a print option there that uses your local printer on your workstation, and I believe that it may print what you see on this page here.
Excellent, thank you. For the agreement for this individual, the tribe that they work with is the entity administrator that shares the agreement conditions with their tribal council and legal department. Will the entity administrator also be able to access the award agreement in order to confirm with leadership prior to the AOR accepting the award?
Yes, every user every user in the system will have access to open and view the application. But only the application submitter assigned to that application, or the authorized representative in this case, would be able to make any updates or changes to it.
Excellent, thank you. We have additional questions. We can go ahead and hold those questions to the end.
Okay, great. So where to go for help? We've provided a lot of information today, but we want to just provide you with a few tools that will help you smoothly transition and utilize and navigate around JustGrants. So make sure that you're checking your emails for updates and information on JustGrants. If you're not getting emails, if you go to the link at the bottom of the screen and click on News and Updates section, it'll bring you to the place where you can sign up for emails. The link that you see on the bottom of each slide also brings you to this page with all the information on getting started, getting access to JustGrants, and setting up your accounts. You have a checklist for all the steps that are needed to get ready, training resources, as we mentioned, that you can either print or watch videos. We do have our job aids available, and then latest information about updates and rollout of new information about the system is available there. So this is a really great resource to check out. If you are experiencing technical issues, any applicant that experiences unforeseen technical issues beyond its control with SAM.gov or Grants.gov or JustGrants, which prevents it from submitting its application by the deadline, must contact the appropriate customer support to report technical issues and receive a tracking number. We do have the email address listed as well as the phone number to reach out to our technical support group. Applicants experiencing difficulties with Grants.gov, we do have the specific link in the PowerPoint that you can click on to get a support there. And as I mentioned for SAM.gov, there's a link for the help desk as well. If you are reaching out to our help desk and you want to have expedited response and resolution, we do suggest that you provide some information that's listed here. This is not a comprehensive list of things that you should bring or share, but it's really helpful to kind of narrow down the issues that you're encountering from a technical standpoint to get you a faster resolution. If you need additional grant-related support we first encourage you to reach out to your grant manager or reach out to the solicitation contact on the solicitation, because these are OJP grants, and as well as COPS and OBW. We do have each of the entities that have email addresses and phone numbers that you can reach out to for additional support. As I mentioned earlier, we do have a JustGrants training page. I recommend to bookmark that. It includes frequently asked questions, help documents, application submission resources, grants.gov resources, as well as SAM.gov. And then if you need to reach out to our JustGrants training support team for additional training support needs, you can email us at justgrantstrainingsupport@usdoj.gov. So with that, I'll pause before we get into CTAS application resources. And Christina, if you want to ask those questions about purpose areas and Diamond, we can certainly do that before we get into CTAS resources.
Excellent, thank you. Moving into the questions, if you're applying for more than one grant and there will be different people responsible for documentation, do I need to put all of them into Diamond? And then how do we attach the grant to the correct person?
That's a very good question. So yes, they all need to be added into Diamond and the appropriate roles assigned. So your organization can have, as many, for instance, application submitters as you need. Olivia walked through the process of assigning the application submitter and the authorized rep to the application once it comes over from grants.gov. The grant award administrator and the financial manager, we have steps to assign those to funded awards as well. And all those steps are found in our training materials. It's very straightforward.
Excellent. Thank you so much. For Purpose Area 1, when filling out an application, if they're applying for hiring and equipment, one is a 3-year project and one is a 5-year project. What would be the date that they add as an end date for that type of an application?
Sure. So when you are applying for Purpose Area 1, you can fill out in the budget worksheet. It's allotted for you. So if you're asking for hiring, the budget worksheet lays out 5 years, because as you said, it's a 5-year grant period. And then if you're applying for equipment, it's the same thing. The budget worksheet allots for up to 3 years. So when you fill out the budget worksheet, it will be easy to do to show 5 years versus 3 years within the actual budget worksheet. When you do your JustGrants information about the period of performance, you can just put both of those dates in there. And then in your narrative, you can just explain that you are applying for both activities. When you actually do the budget worksheet, when you're breaking down the costs, the budget worksheet is set up that it will be 5 years worth of funding for the hiring of officers and then 3 years for equipment and training. And if you have further questions, feel free to email tribalgrants@usdoj.gov. If anybody has any more additional programmatic type of questions, as you see on the screen, tribalgrants@usdoj.gov, feel free to email us and we can forward you to your purpose area point of contacts.
Great, thank you, Melissa. For Purpose Area 1, will the Chief of Police need to sign any authorization for submission of a COPS Purpose Area 1 application?
That's a very good question. In the past, traditionally, we just had the government executive. Traditionally, for example, the tribal chairman sign off on the award as the authorized rep. But I believe that we are moving forward to having 2 authorized reps. So yes, if possible, if you could get a law enforcement, the chief, to be an authorized rep, that might help down the road for award acceptance.
Thank you, Melissa. And to follow up, there was another question to see if they need 2 AORs for the COPS application at the time of application, or is that just to accept the grant? They just want to make sure they understand correctly. And then would that need to be the chief or the vice chair versus the chair?
Lisa, can you speak to the fact that it's just 1 authorized rep for the application piece of it? but I believe COPS is moving towards 2 authorized reps to sign off on the award.
Yes, I believe that that right now the application only requires 1 authorized rep. If in the future, it requires 2, then they both have to be, they'll both have to be registered and in order to be included on the application. But for now, there's only 1. And if between the time that the application is submitted and, if you receive funding, that authorized rep changes, the entity administrator can make that change as well. But second one can be added to the award when and if it's offered.
Thank you.
Did the law enforcement executive migrate from the old COPS office portal into JustGrants?
I believe that legacy data did come, but if that person would like to email tribalgrants@usdoj.gov, that particular question, I can follow up with people above me that could answer it better.
Excellent. Thank you, Melissa. And we did see that someone did comment indicating that they have not seen their police chief migrate over on theirs.
Understood. Feel free to email us. We can talk offline. Feel free to email tribalgrants@usdoj.gov your question and or concern about the legacy data not showing up in your particular entity's information, and we can go from there.
Melissa, this is Sarah. I just wanted to let you know, I obviously cannot speak for COPS data per se, but I think for a lot of, at least the OJP, the GMS information, a lot of it did sort of transfer over into it, but the entity administrator still would need to go in and verify and assign the different roles just to verify out that information.
Great. Thank you, Dara. Thank you, Melissa. For the JustGrants webinars that were open last week, is there going to be more offered? It looks like most of those have filled up, and they're just looking to see if there will be additional offerings.
Yeah, the additional offerings are currently under discussion. So it sounds like there may be, but at this time I don't have any further information on them.
Excellent. Thank you so much. For the SF424, would we enter the total amount requested for all of the purpose areas, or do we need to submit one for each individual purpose area?
Just one 424 in grants.gov, and then when you're in JustGrants, you can break down the request per purpose area within JustGrants.
Excellent, thank you. And then just for clarification, there is an individual looking to see for purpose area 5, just clarifying that that is not going to be part of CTAS this year.
That is correct. It is not. OVW is anticipating maybe opening in April. However, if you send an email to tribalgrants@usdoj.gov or to james.a.smith@usdoj.gov, I can put you in touch with the direct contact for OVW to inquire about that solicitation.
Great, thank you, James. For purpose area 3, it does list that it's a 5-year grant, but can that be written for 3 years instead?
Yes, it can be written for fewer years if you wish.
Great. Thank you, Trish. As a reminder, there are a number of CTAS application resources. The current screen does have listed the JustGrants and the grants.gov customer support lines, as well as the response center. The CTAS solicitation website is also listed along with a link to the FAQs. And as a reminder for anyone who is preparing the CTAS solicitation, there is an online tool that can be used as a resource as you develop your applications. Just as a reminder, there are 2 application deadlines. The first deadline is March 16th, and that's by 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and that's the grants.gov application deadline. And then on Tuesday, March 30th, that is the JustGrants application deadline, and again, that is by 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Do want to see if any of our presenters or panelists have any additional tips or information that they would like to share.
Hi, this is James. Just a few kind of closing remarks. Thank the JustGrants staff. This was very helpful. But to my applicants on the phone, hopefully you found this information useful, and I just want to reiterate a couple things. Start early. The system is brand new, and as with anything, sometimes there's kinks, there's issues. We're giving you all of these kind of advanced deadlines to alleviate some potential problems at the last minute. As you can see, it could take up to 48 hours once you do your stuff in grants.gov to trigger over to JustGrants. And so you don't want to be doing that on the day that the solicitation closes. So please make sure that you get this stuff done by the deadlines that we are suggesting, and also try to get your application done at least 2 weeks or a week in advance so you can have time to thoroughly review it and make sure that you are, that you have everything in order and you've done the best job that you can possibly do. Make sure that you name your document files appropriately. That's very important for CTAS, since the majority of our documents are attachments. If you're meaning to attach a budget, make sure that it's a budget. If you're attaching a purpose area narrative for purpose area 3, make sure that the edit is in fact a purpose area narrative document for purpose area 3. And I'm only reiterating these things because we often see these mistakes over and over again. So you just, read the solicitation, read the purpose area specific resource spotlight document, and refer to the Tribal Safety and Justice website. And as always, if there's any questions, reach out to us. We are not allowed, however, to review any materials that you've prepared, but we can answer questions about the solicitation and maybe any documents that we've produced, but we will not be allowed to review any kind of material. So just want to put that out there. Good luck.
Great. Thank you, James. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope that you can join us for future fiscal year 2021 CTAS webinars. Thank you everyone, and have a great afternoon.